Hello, everybody. Super excited to be here. We are launching another meeting for the Northampton Reparations Study Commission. I'm Sarah Patterson. I'm the co-chair, and I am calling this meeting to order. I'm also going to call roll. So all of our commissioners, please respond when you hear your name. Bill Newman.
Here.
Felicia Lundquist, your mic. Garrick Perry.
Here.
Marissa Elkins. Marsha Morris.
Here.
Usman Power Green. Renika Montgomery Tamaclo.
Here.
Sarah Lynn Patterson, that's me, I'm here. Rachel Naismith.
Here.
Excellent. I'd also like to start with a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was on July the 2nd.
I move it.
Thank you. I'm going to call for a vote. Bill Newman?
Yes.
Your thingy.
Mic's
Bill.
not on.
Bill, your mic.
Yes.
Felicia Lundquist. Garrick Perry. Jeremy Baker Paquette. Marissa Elkins. Marsha Morris. Marsha?
What are you doing?
I posed a motion, and it was seconded for approval of the minutes from our last meeting.
I didn't even get a chance to read them. Approved. Yes, here.
Thank you. Usman Power Green. Renika Montgomery Tamaclo.
Here. Yes.
Sarah Lynn Patterson, that's me, I say yes. Rachel Naismith.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so our meeting minutes from our previous meeting are approved. I am now happy to open public comment, a session that will last up to 10 minutes. Are there any members of the community who would like to speak? Joella Jada Tarbrook. What? Yes. Joella is acknowledged.
Hi, thanks for the acknowledgement. Hi guys, I've been actually, I think this is maybe the first time I've been in this meeting. I've been trying to come for a little bit, so so thank you for being here. But I also have to say another person was interested, said something about it's hard to get on the calendar, or it's not on the city website, or something like that. So my eagerness, I keep missing, and I apologize. I have to leave in about 30 minutes, but it's great to see the group is still going strong, and I'm curious about, I'd like to get all the minutes and catch up on what's going on, so it's my bad. I'm still glad it's up, because I thought maybe it wasn't, so anyway, it's good, and thank you for being here.
Carolyn, you are acknowledged.
Yes, I would like to know how to find all the minutes apropos what the lady just said before. I've been getting, it is hard to find how to get on here, and I've been very grateful to Rachel Naismith for posting on Northampton neighborhoods, but I don't know where to find the minutes. I would have, can you help us?
Yes, we'll have a moment when we can talk about navigation soon after this. Thank you so much for these alerts.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a public comment? Did you? Oh. Yes, please. We have someone in the room who would like to make a comment. You're going to approach the desk and you're going to hit the button.
It's already green, is it?
Yeah, when it's
okay,
green.
cool. Hi, I'm Kate Common. I'm here as a theologian in residence at St. John's Episcopal Church. Just wanting to learn more, and I want to catch up on the minutes too, but wanting to hear more about how faith communities might be involved with the commission.
Excellent. Would anyone else like to speak? Thank you. I just would like to acknowledge that we have 8 people in attendance in addition to our commissioners. All right, so we're going to start with our agenda for today. And our first point of old business is to have an update on the status of community outreach initiatives. And this will be presented by Commissioners Rachel Naismith and Marsha Morris.
Marcia, shall I start? I think I will. Okay. All right. And this is apropos of what you just said. Oh,
Would you like to give Zach a note that you would like gallery?
give Zach a note?
Zach is our person.
Do I go back there?
No, you should, that should be enough.
Oh, thank you. Great, great. Okay. So there are several initiatives going on from this group called Community Engagement and Communications. One of the initiatives, I drafted a letter that is going to be sent to religious leaders, and I've been compiling emails and phone numbers for religious leaders of all faiths in Northampton and slightly around Northampton. And the letter says that, essentially, in the fall, we're planning a program and we're writing to ask for your assistance. We're contacting faith leaders in Northampton to see if they could reach out to African American/Black parishioners and congregants. We want to invite them to a session about Northampton reparations efforts, and this would also be a listening session so we could learn more from them about their experiences in order to incorporate this into a report for the mayor's office and the city council. We would be also interested in any information you have about your own efforts working with people of color or addressing issues related to reparations. Perhaps you would like to visit one of the biweekly meetings of our community engagement and communications group. And finally, would you be interested in attending a full meeting with other faith leaders to talk about this subject? We'd love to hear back from you. My name and phone number.
Do you feel comfortable putting your phone number on this document?
My phone number right now? Sure.
No, I mean, that's what you're gesturing at, that you're going to put your phone number in the document?
Yes, there it is, right? It will be in the document, yeah.
I just want to make sure you feel comfortable.
I am comfortable.
Marsha, we'd like for you to jump in at any point.
I have one other thing.
I'm sorry, everybody. I'm not there because I am in, where am I? I'm in Montana. I'm working on a Native American reservation.
Wow.
So please excuse me for not being there. I agree. Our effort here, and I think we're a little early out the box to bring it to the committee, but we're working toward this, is to float this and see if we can get enough interest from the faith leaders in Northampton to help us with this effort, and also to engage them in an ongoing conversation about reparations to, one synagogue that we've reached out, that Rachel has reached out to, and St. John's. I had a conversation with one of the people on the committee, and then my church has agreed to allow us to use their space, which is College Church. So as soon as I get back, I'm sure we'll be working, or at least I'll be helping with making sure that this committee rolls this forward. So that's one thing. I do think that with the faith leaders, people are busy, and this is the summertime. This is a tough time to reach out to people, but I think it's important that we, reach out to people individually after we send a letter. So that's all I wanted to add to that. Thank you.
I have one other item. I've been in communication with Jeffrey Gold, and he was one of the co-leaders of the Stolen Beam program, which was several sessions It was at the Unitarian Society. It started, I think, in Amherst, and they had very, very successful sessions last year. They are going to repeat it somewhere in Northampton this fall. The goal of this, I have a reason for bringing this up. The goal of the series is educational engagement with a narrative of U.S. racial history that is different from what many of us learned in our schooling. The class will focus on the legacy of African enslavement, what was stolen, what may be owed, and historical examples of reparations. The reason I'm bringing this up is that he and I talked on the phone about whether it would be possible to have an abbreviated session instead of 4 1.5-hour sessions, have a session for the commission. And he said he would be willing to do that, but he needed guidance in terms of content. So I don't know if there's a way that I could get feedback from commissioners on this in terms of content. I'm willing. I told him I'd follow up sometime later in the summer.
I mean, I think I would think to ask Usman if he wanted to take that project on, and if not, to say that our time is limited and we have such a vast amount of information we have to cover that he can just make these decisions on his own. I think that whichever approach you take, I think the most important thing is, like, how can we tailor whatever information is given to us to the Northampton experience? Because a lot of people have general ideas about the Black experience, and it's great. But more and more, as we get closer to producing a published document, we have to make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel of the general history and narrative of disenfranchisement in this country, but rather focusing mostly on what's happened here in Northampton. So I think that's a great idea, and I'm so happy you've touched bases with him. I think that course is a very powerful course. Exciting. Renika?
Rachel, I'd be happy to work with him to like condense his presentation into an hour and a half, if you want to loop me into those conversations.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Can I add that with the stolen being, I think one way that we could really tailor it, the Northampton experience, given what the registrar presented to us, if a good chunk of their material is on how housing has been used, or what I would say the law has been used to disenfranchise Black people from and equal attempt at housing. And this might even be the place where we could think about the simulation after we do this, Sarah, the simulation that you were talking about, because I thought that was a really, really good idea. And then people could actually see in action how this works. And I'm sure they'll give us, or we could ask for a little bit of reading beforehand for this class. And then it would be good to follow it up with something concrete, like the simulation.
I mean, my question would be, would we want an event where the speaker is given an hour and 30 minutes to speak on a topic that is, like, not really run by us? Is that, or, yeah.
So he said he does not want to lecture us for an hour and a half.
Okay.
He would like to present a few ideas and have a guided conversation.
That he's going to guide?
Yeah, and he's also going to get, he said, I would like to have a co-presenter who is African American. Okay.
So this, you guys would like this to be an event outside of one of our regular meetings, is that right?
I think it would have to be. We always have so much going on. Just like the trip to the Ruggles Center was outside of the...
I actually think it would be better to do it inside the event, because I think this is an opportunity for us to really push for participation from the community and actually talking at them in these meetings, that we've taken some of their feedback, we've talked to an expert, somebody from the state or city structure, or actually it's the county structure. And we're now following on with exploitation with somebody that we can ask questions, and then we're following up with a concrete, clear way in which people can see how Black people are disenfranchised through real estate. It doesn't get any more disenfranchised than if you can't put your head down at night.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think that there's just, this is not criticism at all, because I think all this information is so important for everyone. But there's a difference between the commission educating the community and another person coming and educating the community. So I think that what he's doing is something that we want him to do, but I don't want it to be the representation of the commission's evidence, right? And that's why I'm not. So what Marcia sounds like she's saying is she wants an event where part of it is about the Stolen Beam series, and then part of it is about some of the evidence we found, specifically anti-housing. Whereas what you're saying is more like he's going to host this event with Marcia or you, both of you, and it's going to be mostly about the Beam series and what it tells us. And those feel like two separate things.
Right. So he would like to encourage people to attend the full Stolen Beam series in the fall, which we can also advertise and promote. He is willing, he said it's going to be tough to get all that we want to say, the commissioners, into an hour and a half. But he said he's willing to try, but he is not talking about doing a public session. He was talking about talking to the commissioners so that we can all be on the same page and be better informed and fill in some gaps. So I just told him I would get a feel for what people thought and then get back to him.
I'm with Renika. I'd like to be moved into this conversation because that's not what I was proposing that we go after. I'm really proposing that our constituents and the commissioners learn together about specifically the Northampton experience, because we have the material. This is where we can give him actual examples of what he is teaching on. We actually have those examples. We have the data that the registrar's name left us to look at and to, if we have any questions, and this is the data. This is the first-hand data. This is not second-hand research.
Right.
It's not secondary research.
So it sounds.
And then this way, we're learning with our constituents.
I agree.
I don't know. I mean, we're all educators, and all of us, but we never stop learning.
Right. So it sounds like a half and half, right? So he will have an opportunity to talk about the Stolen Beam series and how its principles and texts promote a general engagement with anti-Black racism, and then we're going to have another portion where you and Renika and Marcia will be co-leaders of the discussion, and you're going to give the community a few examples. So it sounds like he's going to have a piece of time, and then you guys will have a piece of time, and then we'll have Q&A. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yes, that's not what I'm saying. We need to integrate the learning.
So,
what is the best way for adults to learn? It's hands-on. Any good trainer will tell you that. You go and lecture somebody that's like dead to most people, and when they go back to work and they want to actually use the things they've learned, or they want to write a paper, whatever, they can't do it because they're not in interactive participation is the best way for adults to learn. Not saying for young people to learn, adults. So I just think and for us to work with our constituents, are we afraid to? Never mind. I just think we're all students always learning. I think this will be a good opportunity for us to learn with our constituents. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, it's Rachel again. When I talked to him, what we discussed was a presentation that was for the commissioners for an hour and a half, and he said it would, it could go on for hours, but he could limit himself to an hour and a half. I'm not sure he would want to have this open to the public with lots of questions and answers because of the time constraints and because of his own experience or lack of. But, I can talk to him again after we have a conversation outside of the commission. So I would say that we need to get back to you about that. He may bow out.
Well, Renika had her hand up, and so
I was just going to suggest that we need to talk to him. I think Martha, Rachel, and I need to talk to him to get an idea of what he's thinking and if that fits in with what we want to do education-wise. So yeah, that's all I was going to say.
Sounds good to me.
sounds good to me. Any other comments?
It's not on this. I'd like to go back. I'd like to go back. This is Bill. I'd like to go back, if I could, for just a second, to the question of or this letter that or email you're going to send to the faith-based community. I glanced at the list, and I'm no expert on the faith-based communities, but I have 3 or 4 email addresses that are more current than what's on your list. So why don't we, if we could get together, we'll set up a time and go over that. I think I can contribute to that, okay?
I also want to say that for the commission, this is a shared document. I'm fine with people just putting things in.
I'd rather talk it over and let you make the changes you want.
I knew I would miss.
Okay, so I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
And we could set up a time before we leave today. Okay.
Any other comments on the question of community outreach?
I one other just question, if I might, to Rachel, is when did you want to send this out?
Well, what we were talking about in the group that Marcia chairs was that this would be a fall event or a series of events. So therefore, I thought it might be a good idea to send it out in a few weeks because people are starting to think about
fine,
the fall.
great, okay.
Any other comments on community engagement, public engagement? This might be a good time. Oh.
One other thing about community engagement, I was on the trail of reaching out and trying to get a meeting set up with the principal of the vocational school, and I wasn't getting anywhere with them. And I then reached out to the mayor's office. She sent a letter over to them introducing me, and by the time all that happened, it was summertime. So I'm still wanting to follow up on that and see if we can get into that high school to be able to get information from the young people and get them to testify, because that also helps to represent the group that is learning in this community that don't necessarily live in this community. I'm also still trying to follow up with this police information that we have talked about, but the reservation trip stopped my progression on that. But when I get back, I'll get back on that. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for that. Also, it would be useful to know if Northampton's regional high school has the same sorts of data that the public high school has, because the public high school, I've received the data, the breakdown of the racial categories. So if you can add that to your list, Marcia, of things you'd like to ask the principal, if they have like simple metrics of student attendance by race over the past decade or 2 decades, and to just send that to us.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
I'm on it.
It'll also be good to have any follow-up from Jeremy and Kendall when we talk next time on some of the initiatives that they proposed and whether or not they have been materializing some of that stuff. But awesome, very good. Any other questions about community engagement development? You said, when do you plan to send out the letter again? You mentioned this to him.
Well, maybe in 2 weeks. I don't have a hard date in mind, but we're going into August.
Yeah. Yeah, your question, your communication with them has to do with trying to get. So my question is, will you off the bat ask for how many Black parishioners or congregants that they have? Because I mean, a part of I'm so sorry. I don't want to go back and read the letter because I have you right here. Yeah.
I can answer. You know, I think that when we say what kind of, could you reach out to African American parishioners, and I believe that if they literally didn't have any, they would get back to us. I don't want to ask too many questions in this. It's as Marcia just said, it was to put out feelers and see the interest, and they will probably respond and ask questions, and Marcia and I will answer them as best we can.
That's very good. At the very beginning of our meeting schedule, I mentioned that a very basic element of demography work on Black communities is to ask questions about their engagement in social life, right? So we ask questions about, how many Black students are at Northampton High School. We have that data. We never got back to the conversation about asking faith institutions for data on parishioners, but I think that should be where we're trying to go. So if someone comes back and says something to you positively, I think you should plan to say, can you give me a tally of how many Black and biracial parishioners that you have? We have no interest of taking personal information, using this in any malicious or nefarious way. We simply want to know how many Black people are involved in social life. And I mean, I don't know how else you ask that or figure that out unless you ask these questions. And I think it's in our purview to ask.
Just a couple things on that, but the most important one is I think we don't want to make people feel defensive or uncooperative, and therefore, if to the extent you have this information, we would appreciate knowing it, and approximations would be more than fine.
Very good. Go for it.
I agree with Bill, and I also think we need to just look at asking them what I was proposing and talking with my church about is putting together an old-fashioned ice cream social as a vehicle and a venue for us to talk directly with African American people that are involved in church life. And that is how Usman and I were working through this conversation. It has always been to bring people together, and using that as an opportunity to talk with them and find out what they think is important. We could also look at some of the things we're proposing and get some feedback from them so we know we're on base and not off base with the things that are important to people, to African American people. So it was never just to get answers to those questions. I think those are.
So I think in terms of our community engagement, a couple of different categories has come up for us. One seems like a sort of presentation-based event where we are learning from someone else, and I know you guys are going to figure that out. And then another type of event is where we are telling the community certain types of things. And so what's on the board is a sort of combo of those two things, which is great. I think that after a month or so, when you figure out what's going to happen, we should ask ourselves, do we want an event that's open to the public? It's not a listening event. It's not someone else with us. It's us telling the community what we found. And we don't have to have that kind of event because we do this every month, right? So we don't have to. But that is just something I think that the event group should be thinking of.
I'm not opposed to having an event, but I think the effort that I'd like to see us make is looking towards this preliminary report. That's where I think our effort should go. And we have an enormous amount of work to do. And I'm going to take, if it's, I hope this is okay with the chair, I'll take a 30-second digression here on this question that is going to come up about asking for an extension of this commission. I think that the chronology of that should be the report, and then followed closely by the request for additional time so that we will have ample time to explore and report on those things in our preliminary report that need more work. And the reason for that is, and this really goes directly to this question of a community event, which is for a whole variety of reasons, and it's not casting aspersions or blame on anyone or anything, is that there has not been a lot of community discussion about this commission or its work or what we found. And therefore, I think that preliminary report is of great significance in order to inform the community about what we've done, what we found, and what the work is we still have to do. And then when we say to the council, we need more time, look at our preliminary report pages 10, 12, and 18, in particular for work that we need to continue, and therefore we need more time. I think that will serve the purpose of informing the community and making a record on why more time is justified and needed, as opposed to, well, we just need more time. So I think that that's the chronology, and I'll press for that in our meetings. So the answer to the question on a community event is, if we're going to spend time on something, let's write a great preliminary report.
Any other comments about this? Oh, Garrick Perry.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Sorry for being late. I missed a little bit of the intro for this update, but I kind of wanted to mirror some of what Bill said, is that we should really focus on this preliminary report, but also I just wanted to remind everyone that part of our charge isn't to do all the things. There are so much work that needs to be done in this community building aspect, and so there are two different things. One is having someone come in and present to this group, this commission, versus having people come and present things for the entire community. Every one of our meetings are open to the public and the community, and I think that we have to remember that, again, part of our charge is to look at what initiatives, what programs we should be working towards. I don't want to get the cart before the horse, not to, cliche, but I'm very thankful for all the work that people have been doing in the community, and I know that having a preliminary report will give us something sort of concrete and robust to present to the community, because I, like most or some of the people here, am eager to share more with our community. We are doing a lot of work. We're really getting hands-on trying to figure out how we can tackle this situation. So that's just what I wanted to say. Thank you, Marcia, and thank you, Rachel, and Renika, and everyone who's been working on this.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like making use of all of our interactions with the community will put us in this sort of space where we can say that we've had sufficient community engagement. I think that if, for example, just using Stolen Beam as an example, if we are hearing from Stolen Beam, it seems natural that we should always be in the mindset of how can we adapt what we are experiencing for this project. Because maybe part of what Garrick is saying is like, it's great to hear from somebody about what they do with their stuff. But, you know, to a certain extent, it has to be, everything has to be oriented towards us and promoting us. And that's a part of reparations, is to like on purpose promote Black people, right? So, cool. Any other comments about this point? Okay, great. So I'm moving on to the third reading of the 20 points for consideration and prioritization. The floor is open to any commissioners. Of course, you have the document that we've been working on. The one thing that I'd like to say is that I want to remove tentatively one piece about disaggregating data by race. And that might not fall on that list after all as a major request, because I'd like for us to just ask more questions of ourselves about that. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is that I will be adding to that list the professional development funding that our undergraduate students asked for, and asking for the provision of a bias training workshop. So those two things will be added to the list because our youth have asked for it specifically. But I think the challenge of asking just wholesale that the city starts to disaggregate data by race, maybe we need a couple of rules to guide that, right? Like, what would the process perhaps look like for the city to do that work? And how might that make people of color feel for that data to be produced by our city? And from my initial sense, the city doesn't have the capacity right now or the sort of workflow to do that, so they'd have to create it. And so my only thing is, like, if they will create that workflow, can they ensure that our Black city councilor is the primary decision maker, right, for what happens? And can he have the power to say, like, okay, no, we don't want to do it. Like, we went this far into it. We don't like what it looks like. We want to get rid of it. I think what a lot of people have been talking about is what happens if we make a set of recommendations and then the city takes it and then we have no more control, right? And I don't think any of us like that idea. So we want to make sure, as Garrick has pointed out in the future, that we have a whole phase that is referred to as an implementation phase, where we get to still be around as the city is moving through the list, or major institutions are moving through the list. So we can be like, okay, well, you should get in contact with us before you, like, do a major serious thing, if that makes sense. So that's the one item that I'm playing around with. And as I'll mention in a few minutes, I took it off the survey altogether because I didn't think it was useful. Any other comments on?
I'm not sure that we should say one person, or no matter how many people are on the city council, should be the person to decide that. I think that requires more discussion. That's not, I mean, for me, from session to session, you don't know, from vote to vote, you don't know who's going to end up as the city council person. So that just feels, what if there's no Black city council person? So I just think, I don't even want to get into a discussion about it. All I'm saying is that that's something we need to talk about. So it's like, how many other issues we need to have some thought put into it. That sounds very like from the hip, because we didn't think about that.
Right, so what I'm thinking about is that we have this initial commission, and then we hope to have an implementation stage commission. And I just use Garrick as the Council Perry as our example, but I think our general premise is that there needs to be a group of us carried over into the second stage, which is the implementation stage. So we largely agree with you. My goal is to get in contact with a member of the city to ask questions about what disaggregating data by race will look like, who will do that work, and how will it be stored. So right now, if anyone wants to know about local city data, they just go to the census, right? Like the census is providing this data. And obviously the city keeps certain types of information that it presents too, but they don't specifically collect and parse out information by race. And I think it's a major question for us to ask. I think for some African Americans, they are reticent because that means that we're more visible as a very tiny population. So if we're 2.1% of the population, we already know part of our socioeconomic status is defined by poverty because Black people keep being 10% or higher of our impoverished rate. We don't like the fact that that's the point of identity for African Americans here, but it's real and it's true. So the idea has been if we disaggregate more data, poverty will not be the central or only point of information by which we are judged. Does that make sense? That's been the primary support.
Do we know that that's a fact for the African American population in Northampton?
Yeah, the fact is that we have 10% of the poverty rate. Yeah, it's in the data that you can, yeah. I'm happy to send you a link of the.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I do have a comment on the list. Are we still on that?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What I would propose, I would love to do this. I'd like to devote the next meeting, like an hour and a half of it, to go through every one of those proposals and have us all comment on them, because this kind of, I can't do justice to the list by I have this comment or that comment. I have a number of things to say about a number of the proposals, sometimes about how it's said, sometimes it doesn't give, I think, recognition to things that have been done. But in general, I support it, but I have this to say about it. And I think that if we get ourselves together, be really focused, start our meeting, don't give people 10 minutes to be late. Start on time, and we're going to spend an hour and a half. We're going to get through all 20 of them, and we're going to come out with a list with the proposals, those that we'll keep, those that will need modification, and some sense of an order of them. And I think that would be a really useful thing for us to do at this point and be the most efficient use of our times. So I propose that, and I'm not sure how we decide that, but that's my suggestion.
I totally agree with what you just said, because I find this to be a very vital part of what we're going to be producing. I mean, this is the crux of it. What kinds of things are we considering recommending? And they're all really important items, but some may be more important than others. And I do think it's worth dedicating a meeting to that.
I think there's a part of me that wants to say, yay, we finally are starting to look at ways to try to come together on an agreement and alignment on things. I think 20 is too much in an hour and a half meeting. I think if we did 10 and 10, but I still always go back to, we haven't finished gathering everything yet, so I don't know how we could have all the recommendations. I continue to say that. And so, and I think we need to stay open as we, like what happened with the registrar, that changed some things. And I think we need to remember that as information comes in, we might find something that we didn't expect. That's really the beauty of research, right? There's the unknown and something popping up that you didn't expect. And I feel like we're trying to solidify this. I liked Bill's comment some weeks ago, and I thought we were coming to an agreement around that, which is to put the recommendations under headings, so we put them all together. If we did that and then tackle, we may find that we don't have as many different categories. Some things might even end up collapsed in together, or it may expand something. But I just think that is the first step. If we could get that, come into alignment around that, then we could do 10 and 10. Do you see what I'm saying?
Garrick and then Bill.
Yes, I see what you're saying, Marsha. And I agree with Bill and Rachel that we just need a focused session on one of these things. And Marsha, to your point, is that we're not trying to give a finality to this. We're really working towards a preliminary report, one of 2 reports, but we have to start doing some of that work and getting under the hood. And I think that having a focused discussion is going to give us a little more depth and nuance as opposed to what we're doing now. So I agree that if we can maybe put that as the only thing on one of the agendas, I think it'll help us move forward. And also, as a side note, time is always going to be our enemy. Not only just time in our meetings, but also everyone having time to get together. As you see now, as you move into summer, people have other obligations and things, and so we're pushing up against a lot of things. And I think that if we can utilize our time in the most effective manner, it's going to feel more productive to us. It's going to give us that, I wouldn't say good feeling, but it'll at least help us start moving towards our goals.
Bill?
Yeah, to Marcia's point, it's not a cutoff. It's not the end of the discussion. It's what we have now. And we're looking towards a preliminary report, and no one's going to say this is all there is or all there shall be. So I think we should feel confident that we are open to whatever we discover, whatever we find, and whatever new ideas we have. In terms of breaking it up into 10 and 10, I don't think so, because I want to have an agenda that gets us through every one of those proposals and have the time allocated to each one and stick to the time and get it done. First of all, those 20 are going to become 15, and they're going to have some subparts. We don't have 20 proposals. That's just not real. So dividing it up is going to make it awkward and weird, and things belong in the first group and the second. Let's just have a meeting. If we have 20 and there were 5 minutes apiece or 6 minutes apiece, that's our meeting. It's a good meeting, and we can do it if we are efficient and we talk to concrete proposals and don't have general discussions. Yes, we want to have a road called the Sojourner Truth Way. Yes, it should be a main thoroughfare. Our initial suggestion is it from Main Street through Florence, and we want to explore with Amherst whether we could have Sojourner Truth Way run the length of the valley on Route 9. End of story. I mean, I don't know if it's the end of the story, but I think something like that. And there's a subpart. We have also in that regard, we should have a committee set up to rename roads or look into renaming of roads, and we should have the David Ruggles Place and ABC, renaming of public areas. And I think we can do that. That's 3 of our proposals, and I don't think that's going to be contentious, and I think it's going to be quick, and I think it's really important because it's a public statement of where we think, and that's why I really like Sojourner Truth Way, because that's what we're talking about, is a way.
Right. And I feel like a lot of the things that we talked about earlier are becoming integrated into our sense of what's allowable right now in the dictates of law. And one of the things that we are advocating for example, are professional development funds reserved for on an income-driven basis. But in that conversation, I'm going to add a little bit more to how we can make sure that whomever is looking at this Northampton High School, that they can still create some avenue for special consideration of racial minorities who are likely in all cases to be undercut by the clear majority in applying for these. So even if we're asking for an income-driven monetary fund for high school students, we still need to add a clause to talk about the importance of making sure that Black students know exactly when the dates are, how to apply. So you don't have to make sure they get selected, but you do have to make sure they know how to do the thing, right, in the first place. And that might be a part of what we can do right now to help certain types of students who are Black to get these awards that are open for everybody, is to teach them exactly how to do it. Go out of your way to make sure all the Black students know how to apply, because that does not defy any law whatsoever. So that's one thing that I think will show up as a subclause as well. Renika had her hand up, and then Rachel.
So yeah, so speaking of the students, like if we can dig more into data about like what their test scores, their college acceptance rates, and like what their AP and like what AP classes they're taking, if any, we can then target funding to those things. If we can show that like they are underrepresented.
That's a very good point. And I think that Marsha, I'd like to hear, I mean, I know you are trying to get an introductory meeting with the principal, but I think that Renika is sharing with you some of the things that you should be prepared to ask for, which is test scores, rate of Black attendance in AP classes, and graduation rates, and also matriculation into secondary higher education. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So what would be excellent for me, Renika and Sarah, is if together, each one of you send me a list, and then Renika, actually Sarah, send the list to Renika, and Renika punch it down, and I will put the list in a format so that when I meet with the principal, I can say, here are the things we're looking for, et cetera, et cetera.
Perfect.
Okay.
Rachel.
Hi, it's Rachel again. I think that really sounds great, and I'm very interested in the whole educational aspect of this, but I do want to go back to, do we need a motion that, for instance, the next meeting, we will devote the entire meeting to going over the list? Do we need a motion for that?
I agree. I don't think so. I at least agree with you now that you all feel strongly about that, and at least it'll get us on the road. So I certainly am happy to do that. Is anybody against it, really, is the question?
So I'm going to interject as a counselor. We do not need a motion to put things onto the agenda. It is that's the realm of the chairs. So I would defer to Dr. Patterson.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm gonna say I'm fine with it. I will mention that I've already invited members of the St. John's task force to investigate racism in church archives. I did invite them and list our next meeting as one of the meetings, and I invited the Sojourner Truth Committee and a scholar in Boston. But in either case, I can always ask them if the next meeting is useful. So we can sort of make a sort of informal commitment to using most of all of our meeting for that purpose. And I think that everything else really feeds into that anyway. I think most of us feel comfortable with adding to that list the request to remove enslavers' names with some sense from street signs, with some sense that
It's the public, the naming and renaming of streets. It's a category.
Yeah, okay.
And we have the Sojourner Truth Way in Northampton and in Route 9 in the Valley. We have the David Ruggles place. We have the renaming. The renaming of streets is the most complicated and most contentious, but it is a suggestion and it is a good proposal, a sort of subpart C or 3 or whatever it is, which is the consideration of the committee to consider renaming of streets. it's not something we have to solve. It's something we have to suggest. And it's a good idea, and it's straightforward, and its implementation is really complicated, starting with what are you going to do with Washington Ave, by the way, among other streets which are going to be problematic. So, but for us to say that there should be a committee or commission to continue the work of renaming, look, it's going to be complicated and expensive just to rename Main Street or have a second name, which is probably more doable legally, or a second name for Route 9, which is State Route. But we could, can we name it, and which will be called Sojourner Truth Way? So anyway, I think that there's not going to be opposition in this commission to doing that. And I think we can.
What, you mean the Sojourner Truth Way?
Yeah, to creating a lengthy main thoroughfare in this city called Sojourner Truth Way.
Right.
I've already stated my opposition to that. If we're putting our chips on the table for proposals that the city, that we really want the city to do, I would much rather focus around housing and some of the other things. The renaming of streets and taking off slavers' names and all this kind of stuff, I don't think that those things are more important than, as even in my discussions with the community engagement team, what we talked about the importance of showing that we actually have evidence that Black people were not allowed to buy property in Northampton. And that is way more important than renaming a street.
Garrett?
In terms of reparations, if you're asking in terms of life in Northampton, and do I think that would be a better thing for that, then sure, why not rename a street? But if we're going to put our backing behind something, I'd like it to be focused around something that has to do with reparations.
Garrick and then Bill. Garrick and then Bill. Garrick has his hand up.
Correct. So I just want to say that this is not an either-or situation that we're in. We are making lists, and we can try and prioritize things. This is something that when we have our discussions, we can say these are kind of what we would like to see implemented now. That, this is a very big, broad approach. I just want to remind everyone that. In terms of the meeting where we discuss these 20 things, Chair, I would suggest that stick with what you have for the next meeting. I think that this discussion will require a majority of this commission to be there. In order for that to happen, we should maybe send around a doodle poll or something like that, because we want to have it so that everyone has their voice heard. Because everyone, as Marcia has shown and Bill has shown, we all have opinions, and so I don't want anyone left out of the conversation. So let's try and focus on that part.
Right, and I think, Bill's next, my bad.
No, I concur with Garrick. This is not either or. I do agree that we are going to have a discussion, and we can say this. We already have two groups: some things for the city to do as a municipality, and a second, which is a group of things that that individuals or private institutions in the city should do. That's one. That's already two of the categories, or one way of splitting these up. And I fully agree that housing is crucial, and it's also tremendously complicated, and it requires a lot of knowledge and understanding of what's happening in the city, particularly around low-income housing, which I'm sure collectively we have. So it's not either or.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that this is the time to be brave, right? So we have to come up with proposals and logistics, some idea of having logistics. But I think, if, Marcia, you really think there needs to be a greater focus on housing, I ask you next meeting, please come with specifics about how we can do that, because we want to make sure your positions are represented. I mean, what does that mean? So right now we know, I can name at least 3 different areas right here that there's current construction of affordable, of quote unquote, what looks like it's trying to be affordable housing. I don't know what those rents are going to look like. So this is the moment right now for us to be telling people what to do. So what does it mean? Are we asking that there is some point person in the city, no matter if it's based in the municipality or if it's in some private or a charitable organization, there is a specialist in housing for people of color, period. Right? There's somebody in the city that someone can be like, hey, there is a person who keeps up with all the information about affordable housing and can just tell the person about how to get in contact with someone or where to look or legal services to help if there's a problem. Is that what we're aiming for? Because, Marcia, I'm on your side, but you have to start telling us what it means. What does housing justice mean? What is the initiative? What is your ask? The most radical ask that I can think of would be, we want 30 units dedicated to Black people. That's an actual reparations ask. And if no one here is brave enough to ask those questions, our time to completion is gonna keep going out. Like, I feel like some people are going to start being brave like 2 months before the report is due. They're like, no, we should have asked for this. So a part of me wants to say, be brave, come with all your ideas, and then we can start to chisel down what goes in that third list. Because a true ask is to say we want spaces reserved. We should be asking ourselves how brave we should be for this third list.
I thank you for saying that. I said what I thought. I put my chips on the table and said, hey, the issue with policing has got to get dealt with. Here's the area that they tried to deal with but didn't get dealt with. I even brought the co-chair to the meeting so that he could say, hey, this area now.
Marshall, we can't hear you. Renika, you may speak.
Terrific person, but I'm a little old to be told what to do. But I will put my chips on the table again, and I will come with very concrete, with very brave and concrete ask about policing. Renika and I talked, and Renika, you can speak to the housing issue. Would you please do that right now?
Yes, actually, that's why my hand is up.
Renika, you're acknowledged.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So no, that's actually why my hand is up, because like we have, like I said, like we have the registrar come, we have the deeds to say, no, these houses can't be sold to these people. So the ask, we have, Massachusetts already, the state itself has like home buyers assistance programs to help with down payments. That would be my ask. That is like, we have the data, we have the information that shows that Black people were deliberately kept out of housing in Northampton. And that has affected the home ownership rate to this day. So therefore, the way to repair that damage is to create a program that helps Black people buy houses.
That's one example, and we'll come next week. Not next week, we'll come for the meeting and come with those concrete.
And I can dig more into what other cities have done around housing and housing assistance. And it may not be buying, it may be something like being on a list for apartments or whatever. But yeah, but I can look it up. But that's a lot. That's actually a central tenet for lots of reparations movement is housing. So, but I don't want to take up too much time. So I will in 2 weeks, I will have, and hopefully I can circulate it before then so everyone can look, but I'll have more information.
Very good. One of the other things that fell off our list was bus passes or any sort of thing like that. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but Governor Healy's office gave out a grant for $188 million, over $1 million, to increase PTVA bus stops, to expand them to low-income and rural areas. And I think it just ended up being that the rural areas ended up having more expansion, which we're very grateful for. And that's one of the sort of background wins in our state that I think does match up to what we asked for very early on in our tenure, which was just much more accessibility with public transportation. However, part of what we have to figure out is, even with things like that happening at the state level, how does it trickle down to African Americans? Are Black people actually benefiting from this? You know, if there are more routes given to rural areas outside of Boston, is that a community with African Americans, right? So there is some additional research that we can do to see, in a very specific example where we like the sort of policy that we see coming out of the state, how can we track and measure outcomes that do specifically benefit Black people? The one drawback of an initiative like this, which is a great initiative, most of us will be like, yeah, great, more people do need to be able to ride the bus. The drawback is, what if this initiative never really touches any of the Black population? So it's an initiative that sounds like it's addressing a Black issue, because we know here we have a poverty rate that's disproportionately high. We know Black drivers have a disproportionately high rate of engagement with use of force cases, and we know African Americans have historically had a hard time finding housing here. We have a connection of different areas of disadvantage, and when we have an actual response to that by the state, does that response actually trickle down to Black people? So I think that's one of the questions I'll be looking into going forward.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too far off the agenda, but just to respond, the other challenges are bus drivers counting people by race, or could they even legally count people by race? And, you know, the other idea is what is for lower income versus African Americans, because some of the things coming out of the state, it's income based. So that's another thing to think about.
Right.
Go ahead.
I think that for purposes of that next meeting, that what we can do to be able to get through an agenda and to represent the different ideas and perspectives that are on this commission is, for example, to say housing. We want to explore the following. We don't have to solve this issue, because you've raised the question of affordable housing initiatives in Northampton. There are many of them, and to do justice to this will require sitting down at length with the CDC, with the Northampton Housing Authority, with the developers for the various projects that are going on. You want to also talk to probably East Hampton, where they're very successful affordable and as well as market rate housing going. I mean, there's lots to do. The question you raised, for example, about, so for housing, we need to identify the issues. We will never, not going to solve them at this next meeting. We need to identify the objective we're trying to get to and identify what we need to learn. And that's what I think we need to do. I think that being bold is a great idea, but it's a question of raising the issue of how we get there, not giving a solution to how we get there. You raised the issue, for example, of transportation. A lot of that transportation money out here is going to create transportation for rural communities, impoverished or low, medium income communities that are overwhelmingly white.
Right. Right, yes.
So, that's just reality of how it's going to work. So I think that we need to, for example, give statements of we want to ensure on transportation that the PVPA is adequately and appropriately serving low-income and marginalized communities. That's what we want to do. I don't think anyone on this commission is going to disagree with that.
And I think the PTVA example is still really a stellar example, because what we're asking for theoretically is like the state would say, PTVA, we gave you this grant. We know there are certain types of issues that we wanted to solve. Can you be responsible or accountable to a division of people who represent African American interests? This thing that Bill has said is so important because it's come up for us over and over. The problem with income-based initiatives, when you have a sheer a sheer majority of white people, is that any sort of randomization is going to make it a white person's benefit, because we're such a tiny number, and you're asking too much of us to be like, well, we're gonna pick you out of the hat, right? And because so the first part of it is like, well, Sarah, you said that there are 10%. Right, African Americans here, 10% of us are impoverished. And you want it to be income driven because this 10% needs that work. But if it's at the state level, then it's not just open to people who are poor, and it's not just open to Northampton people, it's open to any and everybody. And then the PTVA is an independent organization that chooses how it implements. So what we're saying, in addition to making recommendations, is that we want to make recommendations, and we want people to be accountable to us, to come to us and ask our opinions on things, and to be aware that simple randomization does not create justice. It just creates another sort of dominant, non-dominant sort of interaction between the numbers. So, I mean, it's a tough thing that we're asking for. We're just always asking that Black people have more of a chance to get a benefit than someone else. That's what we're asking outright. And we can't mince our words on this. All right, so we're gonna move on to our next agenda item. If everyone goes to their Google Doc,
Excuse me, folks, I'm so sorry, but I do have to go. And I have a group I have to meet, but I definitely wanted to come to this meeting, and I will see you all at the next meeting. And team, our outreach team, I'll be in touch with you guys. Talk to you later on. Bye.
okay, thank you, Marcia. So we're gonna move on to our community survey. I'd like everyone to go to the Google Drive and pull it up. I put a link in the document that's on the NRSC community survey page. There's a test link, and so I'm just going to read out the questions, and you can click through the questions and give us a sense of what you think. All right, so as you'll see, I don't have any masthead. I haven't given credit to any organization. I really like this kind of blank framework in terms of the style and design. So far, this is how I like it the best. So the first two questions ask that respondents tell us their age and their race. I'm sorry, their age and their residency status. Does anyone have any issues with the groupings, the age groupings that I've created? No. No, okay. So the second question asks, select the attribute that best describes your residency or employment status. All respondents must live, study, or work at least part-time in Northampton, Florence, or Leeds. Does that sound right? They have to work at least part-time?
What number is this now?
Question 2.
Okay.
Do you see that?
I will see it in a minute. The thing I'm looking at doesn't have numbers. I'm looking at you want us to get into the survey.
Go into the survey, because
Sorry.
it's not updated. The survey in its actual form is the final survey.
Okay.
Right, so, yeah.
I'd be inclined to leave out part-time, just say live or work, they'll figure it out. If they don't think they work here, they'll say no. I think for purposes of our having legitimacy, we want to say the respondents live or work in Northampton.
I mean, the reason why I put 20 hours of part-time is because, I mean, what if someone's like, I did one thing in Northampton one time?
Yeah, okay, 20 hours, sure. But
I mean, I think that the drawback could be that someone could just not like the language. Like, I don't want to identify myself as a part-time worker, but, so you don't like the...
I'd say at least half time.
And then I'll take the 20 hours out of the actual thing, current worker.
Any way that conveys the idea, it's got to be important in your life.
Okay.
Sarah, I had started taking this survey, and it won't let me go back to read the previous ones. So maybe we could add a little back arrow so that we could go back and, anyway, I'll just listen to your descriptions.
That's a question. Do you think there should be a back? I didn't put one there on purpose.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Cool. And then it was, I believe, Marissa's suggestion that we emphasize student status much more than we had before, which is why resident, current worker, high school student, or college or university student is listed.
Good.
Great. Okay, so the next question is select your racial category. So we list the 5 racial categories that are supplied in the U.S. Census. My question was, should we ask if people are black or non-black? Should we simplify it that much, or should we ask for all the ranges of?
I think we should ask for all the ranges, and we are used to seeing that in other surveys, too.
Okay.
I agree it should be as comfortable as possible. The more familiar it is, the better it is. And I think that for a lot of people of color, say black, is that a primary identification? Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Hispanic, I mean, I think you got to give people a chance to try to say who they are.
So you think there should be another category?
I think that categories that look familiar and that are consistent with other surveys is what we want.
Okay. Because it almost sounded like we could add another question that lets black people tell us much more specifically who they are as people, but that's not necessary. All right, so the next question is about gender category, male, female, non-binary, or third gender, and then prefer not to answer. After the first 2 questions about residency and age, they can go back and they can answer or not answer any question they want. So then we have 2 students that ask, do you identify as a descendant of a person who was enslaved in the U.S.? And we ask this of only black people. And then we ask only of black people, do you identify as a descendant of a person who was enslaved in Northampton specifically? Do you think those 2 matters, or should we collapse them into one?
So yes to the first question.
Yeah.
As for the second question, I think it would be interesting. I think it has serious legal ramifications, as we're going to learn when we talk, I'm sure, when we speak to the folks from Evanston.
Yes.
And if other people who are much more familiar with surveys than I am think it's an important question, I don't object to it. I think we're going to get a pretty small response rate.
Yeah.
Tiny. And I think that's unhelpful in some ways. But if we're willing to, as long as we're being straightforward, I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I appreciate this response. The thing that we've been saying over and over again is that we believe that the wrongs perpetrated and resident from the issue of enslavement has followed a particular type of people who are marked by skin color. We do not believe that a white person who has from 1601 or 1654 or 1700 had one black relative and then has not lived their entire lives as a black person, nor has had to live their lives as a black person, should be able to come forward and say, well, I had 100 years ago someone in my family who was black, and therefore I'm on par with every other black person alive today. We're not saying that. Rather, we're saying that this is a joint experience of slavery and post-slavery that's specifically connected to the skin color of people who are black and African American. And we don't want to give any special benefits for black people to white people who have not held the identity of a black person. Now, if we had a person like Rachel, if we had another type of person who came in and said, my entire life I have lived as a black person, I have a parent who is a black person, I just happen to look white, that's a completely different situation, because the person has lived a social life as a black person, and the person has a black parent who is black. So that person, whether or not they look black, is black, right? That's a biracial person. A white person who has not lived as a black person in today's time is not eligible for a reparations project that is for black people. I just want to reiterate that.
I don't think this question gets at all of those nuances, though. I mean, it's a basic piece of information that would be very useful for us. And I think there are a lot of black people who probably don't know that much. They haven't done a full investigation of their ancestors. So I think it's I think both of them are interesting questions. I think we could leave them in.
Okay.
I just want to jump in really quickly and just point out that most Black Americans would not need to do an ancestry test because 90% of Black Americans descend from American chattel slavery.
Yeah, I mean, we feel very confident. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, we don't need to do I mean, I haven't done any genetic testing, but I've done genealogy. But in general, Black migration is not very large. It really only started in the 70s with the Immigration Act of '68. So 90% of the African Americans that live in the U.S. today are descendants of the 4 million former chattel slaves from 1865.
And it's actually a point of racist behavior to try to force black people to define exactly their trail back to slavery when they weren't given last names, okay? Slaves were not given last names. Black people were regularly, all the way up into the 20th century, not allowed to marry white people specifically or marry their partners. We all know that women weren't allowed to hold property and get credit card lines, etc., open up their own business industries. So asking black people to define their exact heritage is actually a racist thing. So thank you, Renika.
And I totally agree with you and Renika. The reason that I raised that is because some people might just say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Absolutely. It's just not a requirement for us. All right, so we have another question. Rate your sense of the racial climate towards Black and African American residents and workers in Northampton. And we split this up so they can answer response to, in general, people who are workers, Black people who are students. And there's a scale of extremely bad to extremely good.
I'm sorry. Some of the questions that have to do with what is the environment in terms of being a Black person, I just don't know how a white person can answer that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, this question invites Black and white people to answer this question specifically. There is another question that comes that asks Black people to specifically respond. Renika, what do you think?
I actually think it's a good question to show the disparities in how people perceive treatment. So you're going to get the Black people's response, and you're going to get the non-Black people's response, and I'm almost certain that they're going to be different. And I think that that's something that we need to have the information on so we can, start addressing those gaps in understanding.
Rachel?
Okay, it's Rachel again. I don't think I could answer these. I would like to have one additional choice, which is I don't have enough information or something along those lines. I wouldn't feel comfortable. I just wouldn't feel comfortable trying to guess at, I haven't even been in a workplace for years for some of these questions. So to have, I don't have enough information or something like that would be good.
Or like I prefer not to answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, a part of my first instinct is to just rebut, that position and say we want white people to feel uncomfortable. We want to force them to answer a question. Either you think it's okay or you don't think it's okay, right? Or you saw something in the past that bothered you and you think that's a part of why things just aren't okay. We also... But I don't have a dog in the fight on this. I mean, it is a survey that I'm leading, but I can. Do you think prefer not to answer or I don't know is a better thing that you're saying? Which one?
Honestly, I think I don't know. That would be the one I would check off. And if there weren't something like that, I would want to skip this question because I don't have enough information. I don't want to guess.
Well, so in this case, a person's life is their evidence, right? So, Rachel, if your time living here, would you say that you would say there's an issue of race here? Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily because you saw a white person beat up a black person because the person is black. It's because you have a sense that black people don't matriculate into positions of economic fairness or empowerment in the same ways that white people do. Everybody can see that. We all can see that. But I do want to remind you that they can just not answer the question. Okay. So maybe I can write somewhere you don't have to answer this question.
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay. So right after this question, we asked people to describe initiatives or programs that could support Black and African Americans' fair access to socioeconomic data and improvement. And then this is when we start to have the text-based responses where people can respond however they like. Have you personally experienced discrimination in Northampton due to your race or ethnicity? So we asked this question twice. The first question is asked generally. Have I, and it doesn't matter what your race is, right? Mm-hmm. And then the next one is, have you witnessed or experienced anti-Black discrimination because of your or someone else's Black race or ethnicity? So this is, have you specifically experienced or witnessed racism? Okay. Describe any instances of anti-Black discrimination, which just gives everyone an opportunity to say what they experienced if they wanted to. Do you think any of the following systems need to change to ensure Black residents receive fair treatment? And then we have a slider bar, so they can tell us the degrees to which some industry that they think should change will change. And we made a list early on that is here. All right. If you adjusted any of these categories, describe how or why change is needed. So and then that's it. That's the whole survey. I think it's 14 questions in all. Yeah. So any responses or no? Okay, great.
I just want to say, I think the idea of the sliding scale and that list, I think that's going to be really telling and very interesting. So I'm glad that's on there.
Good. Yeah, I wanted to make sure something was interactive. The one downside with using a scale is that people using it on their phone might find it a little difficult. I just want to make sure I got everything right. So everyone is okay with the title right now that I'm using? Do you see the title?
Can you read the title?
Racial Climate Survey for Northampton Reparations Study Commission. We're back at the issue where we don't say black in anything. So are we okay with that? Okay. Great, so we're gonna move on to new business, a discussion about creating placards for public spaces. We have the discussion about black soldiers of the Revolutionary Era that I'm going to jump to, as opposed to dedicating time to placards. Garrick, your hand is up.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to hop back to the last thing.
Okay.
Thank you for all the work on this survey. Me as a promotional rap dad here, I'm just wondering if will there be space to look at how we disseminate this information? I know that there's a kind of a little blurb on that, but also how it translates across platforms, because I tried to take the survey on the computer versus on my phone. There's some discrepancies, so if this is not the place, I would love to dive into actual implementation. So I just want that to be on the record. So.
Absolutely. We can talk about it now, or we can talk one-on-one. So the primary way is for us, we're going to put a static link on the web page for our commission. And then we're going to have our 2 clauses that everyone has to be 18 years or older, and everybody has to be a resident, a student, or a worker part-time. And then there will be that. I can also generate a QR code. And I mean, from talking to Marissa earlier, Marissa felt like putting the link on the webpage was enough. That we should put the link on the webpage, and then we should just tell everybody. So what do you think?
I think we need to do more.
Okay.
Putting, flyering at some of the public housing would be important, I think. Local laundromats, the libraries, there are a number, and I don't want to get into it, but we did some of this work when I was on the committee to study barriers to service. So I will forward a list to places that we contacted, and also reaching out to some of our other partners in the community who do some of this work. MANA comes to mind. I think would be important, because we just want to cast as large of a net as we can, and I think just posting it on a website is not going to do that, because unfortunately, there's not really a spotlight on us yet, and so I think that we could be proactive with that. So that's my 2 cents.
I think that's a great idea, and I'm sure I'm more than happy to work with you on a plan, a better dissemination plan. So this thing can go live at the beginning of next week. How do you feel about moving forward? Like, I'd like to have one conversation with Garrick, and then after that, I'd like to be able to move forward, because why are we waiting?
My thing again would be that the mobile version of this I have on my phone is lacking.
Okay.
Just some of the words aren't there. I'm just missing. Maybe I didn't update my phone, but I would like to at least, let's try and get every member of this commission to try and fill it out in different, like, I have an Apple product, I don't know how it looks on an Android. These are things that if we want to reach the most amount of people, we want to make it as easy as possible, because the last thing we want is someone to load it up and then it's not working, so they stop taking it.
Right, yeah.
Let's maybe try and do an internal soft launch.
Okay, we can do that. Go for it.
And I was going to say that I think there are a couple of things that need to be fixed. I think the content's fine. I just think, back arrow, make sure all the text appears. I just did it on my phone. Didn't have a problem, but there were missing words at the beginning.
Wow,
And
you mean missing words from...
at the very beginning of the sentence, it kind of started in the middle.
Starts like midway through.
Right. I can show you. And then the other thing is, I like the idea of doing the launch where we're, what Garrick said, that he's got a list of places, and we could all be busy getting the word out at the same time. I like that idea. So it might not be in a week, but I think we're really close to being able to get it out.
Okay. What do you guys think about the dissemination schedule? This is a really tough thing. It's like, do we let it go out for 2 months because we need to analyze the data, and we're obviously gonna be working on the preliminary report, and trying to get that out as we're getting this data back in, which is gonna be brand new information. So I proposed a 2-month dissemination schedule. So if we get this off by, let me look at my calendar. So you think more than a week. So if we try to aim for July 31, for example, so that's September through September 31. That's a 2-month period. We would have 1 month before that preliminary report comes out. We will not try to put this data in that preliminary report. It's too much to do. But how do you guys feel about a 2-month dissemination schedule? Renika?
I think it definitely has to run through September to give the college students time to come back.
Okay. Okay, that works. And then I always mention before, we can also adapt. We can create another survey, and we can do another survey closer to January when the report is already out there, that asks the harder questions that maybe that some of us have, that we want to be brave in asking. I know most of us disagree with the idea of a citywide referendum on the question of paid reparations, but I think that if we have a second survey, then that survey can do some of the work. If you go all the way back to the files that I sent at the very beginning of August when we first started meeting almost a year ago, you'll look at the UMass poll data, right? And UMass poll asked a sample of about 1,500 people how they felt about 7 types of reparations, right? Like housing vouchers, direct payments, other of the more popular types. We could ask that same question. We can do that same thing here for our community. So I just wanted to put that out there. Okay. So any other remarks on the community survey? No. Okay. We would now like to hear from Bill for the rest of our time on the research he's done collecting information about Black soldiers of the Revolutionary War, and his work on building a list of charitable projects that have been dedicated to Black people.
So in that regard,
Your mic, Bill, we can't hear you.
so in that regard, the previous agenda item about placards and historical placards, which is going to be one of the suggestions on our list next meeting. I'm going to suggest one of us between now and then talk to Historic Northampton, find out exactly how many historical placards are downtown and in Florence, where they are, why they are there, and whether there were other places that needed or they felt should have been included in this historical tour that they created, and see where we can pick up on that work. We need to give credit where credit is due, and we need to enhance the work that's been done, and that's one place where we can do it. We need to know more specifically, I think, from Steve Strymer and Historic Northampton. So one of us, let's figure it out between now and then.
I'll do that.
Okay.
I already.
Great, great. So with regard to, in that same vein, I asked a number of organizations for their list of their work with regard to reparations and their anti-racism work. One was the Northampton Education Foundation. I've sent that information to Sarah and to Usman. One is the Sojourners Statue Committee. They have various programs, and I've asked for that. I don't have that yet. I asked the Sojourner Truth School, for a representative sampling of their reparations offerings and anti-racism work. I've given that list. I received that back from Andrea Vazian, Reverend Vazian, who is the founder and of the Truth School, and I've sent that list to Usman and to Sarah. And I asked for the information. I went to visit, suggest it's worth your time to go visit Memorial Hall and the remembrances that are at Memorial Hall for people who have died in the wars of this country. There is, as I think most people know, a section of Arlington National Cemetery is just for people who were enslaved.
Section of what?
Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. There is a section for, is really post-Civil War, but people who were enslaved. It seemed to me that one of the places where, and we can look at, there's information and data we can look at for Civil War veterans, but there is no Civil War. It's not commemorated in our Memorial Hall at all. We had in Northampton, for many years, lived here were Sidney and Emma Kaplan, and they were the co-authors of a book that is, I think, of significance, titled The Black Presence in the Era of the American Revolution. And Sid Kaplan was one of the founders of the African American Studies Department at UMass, and is remembered with enormous fondness and respect. Emma Kaplan, they were married forever, was the librarian at Smith College for many, many years. And after Sid died, she continued their work, and she compiled the names of Massachusetts soldiers, black soldiers in the Revolutionary War. And that list was then looked at, and there was by their son, who is a professor at SUNY, and he provided to me, and I provided to Sarah and to Usman, a list of the Northampton-related black soldiers in the Revolutionary War. We have that information. It has never actually been published because the publisher, the person who was going to publish this, actually passed away. And so it has never been published, but it exists. And Paul Kaplan sent it to me. And it's just a magnificent piece of historical investigation. And I think that for our proposal, and there are, I forget, 34, 35 names, Sarah? And I think for our proposal, all of these things I think should be appendices to our recommendations. But this one in particular, here are the names. It's just a magnificent piece of historical inquiry. And to put those names in Memorial Hall or at Memorial Hall or on its own remembrance on Memorial Hall, I don't think it's up to us to start saying how this can be done. But we can say it should be done. And I think it's a spectacular piece of history that we can bring to light. Northampton can remember the black soldiers who fought to found the country.
Absolutely. And I think it's, I just want to call a few of the names, right? You have the princes, which I really love. Prince Olmsted and then Prince Peter. And I'm assuming in the list that we have, the last name is, the first name listed is the last name. Obviously, the way it's listed suggests that that's the case.
You know what I know? I can ask Paul if he has information.
John Pond, Levi Pruitt, James Taylor. James Taylor was 20 years old, a very dark man. He was a part of one of the regiments of Minutemen, and they marched April 20th, 1775, in response to the alarm of April 19, 1775. And we see him reporting at least up until 1780, and had been apparent in documents about wages all the way up until 1781. So these are people who have spent years and years of their lives dedicated to this and fighting. And so this is a really enormously exciting piece of information. I thought I had already uploaded it to one of the attendees, but I'm going to make sure I do that so that everybody can review it. It's a very exciting collaboration of information. I'm also super excited to say that in addition to this appendices.
I'm going to go with
Appendices.
Appendices, thank you.
Appendices
It's an
would be-
appendix.
Appendices would be plural.
Appendices,
But
right.
appendix would be what you need to have removed.
Right, so one of the appendices that I will be adding is all of the labor history of Black Northamptoners throughout the 19th century. And so everyone will have a larger amount of data. Fingers crossed, I don't know if you guys still remember the geopolitical code or the geocoded maps that I talked about months and months ago. I'm still working on those for migration across the 20th century of our Black residents. So I think that'll be really cool because we'll get to look at that, and I'm so sorry that it's come later than most people would have liked. And I do think that I will be posting a draft of our report at least by our second August meeting. As I've mentioned, I've been working on the draft. There was the research phase and then there's the writing phase. So the writing phase just has taken time. That's all that is. So I'm gonna get this draft of the whole report out to you guys sooner rather than later, and then we'll just keep working.
Let me just add on this work from Sid and Emma Kaplan. They actually have all the historical documents as to why this name is here and all the references to the people.
It's wonderful. It's really, I'm happy that we can make use of it. Unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about the eligibility clause. I think that's going to come up in our meeting in August. I just wanted to reiterate a couple of updates really quickly here. One update is that we're meeting with Robin and Attorney Cummings on August 6th. A group of us will be two co-chairs, Bill Newman and Garrick, if you'd like to attend, or Marissa, will attend that meeting at 4 p.m. It's not for the entire commission because it's not our meeting, it's an information meeting, and so we'll report back on that.
Can I add something there? I have a collection of newspaper and other media articles about the lawsuit that was brought against this program, and I'm happy to distribute them. Maybe I'll curate them a bit so it's not too much material, but I can send it out to everyone in the
I think you should send that out to all of us in an email.
Okay.
Before August 6th so that everyone can be caught up.
Okay.
It sounds to me that next meeting, we want to focus almost exclusively on our first list, and then probably should also touch on the eligibility clause, so just to touch on it. Is that right? Am I hearing that right from everybody?
Eligibility is a big, complicated question. I think that having that discussion after we've spoken with the folks from Evanston is actually a good idea.
Okay.
I would put that horse before the cart, or what?
So the next one then is the one where we're going to go over the currently 20.
And talk about Evanston, because we will be having come from that meeting.
I wonder if we'll have enough time, but we can try.
And the eligibility clause. Because this is our final meeting. Our next meeting is on August the 6th. Yeah. So, I mean, it's three things. A point of 20 lists. I mean, a list of 20 points for the municipal-driven reparations. And then conversation about the meeting, about Evanston, and then eligibility clause. All right, great. Are there any other comments? Are we okay with opening the floor for one last public comment?
I just have one question. Can you say one word about the administrative assistant search?
Still not selected.
Okay.
Garrick, do you have any more information? Nope. All right, great. Yeah. I think we're doing such a great job. I just want to commend everybody. Everyone is pulling information together at really rapid speeds, and I just think it's really terrific. I don't see any sense that we should hold a second public comment session. I don't see any sense that we should, so I'm going to make a motion for adjournment.
Seconded.
What do you think, Garrick?
Motion's on the table, so.
Okay. All right, so there's already a motion on the table for adjournment, so we will proceed as such. Newman? Oh, go
Sorry,
ahead.
before we go, but I would like to let people know that they can also always submit public comments to the chairs that we can put into the record as well.
Carolyn, does this have something to do with me explaining how to get to the meeting? Maybe that's what that is. So,
No. Well, actually, yes. I want to tell some people about the meeting, and I don't know how to tell them ahead. I always wait and I get it from Rachel the day before, and I'd like to have a little more of a heads up of a link.
okay, great. So, everyone can watch me right now. I'm gonna share, my desktop. All right, so I'm at our homepage on the city webpage. I'm gonna scroll all the way down, and I'm gonna look for it on the calendar of events. So you can click, oops, whatever I did.
Oh, go over to August.
Okay, so I'm in.
Oh, it is under meetings.
Oh, I see.
So I can hit view all meetings, and I have a whole calendar full of stuff, and then I can move from month to month. So here I can see that
Yeah, there it is.
our meeting is here. So I'm gonna click it on the calendar once, and then I'm gonna go to more details.
Oh.
So now it's gonna open to another page. So here, I'm gonna hit download agenda right here, because this is just a title. So I'm gonna hit download agenda. And then the agenda that I pull up, which I'm not gonna show, oh, here it goes.
Yeah, okay.
Right here, you gotta click it again. That's why I said you just have to keep clicking. And then here's the Zoom meeting link, okay?
And how far ahead of a meeting does that go up?
I've been trying my best to get it up a week before. I'm gonna do as much as I can. It, at the very least, goes up the Friday before the meeting. The Friday before the meeting. And it might not go up till 5 p.m. on Friday, so you still have to look for it.
Okay. And what about the other thing you said you would show is how to find minutes?
Yes, so, that's a great question. I'm not sure why the minutes aren't up there, because they should be. So, let me,
It's not a user-friendly website. I've seen other cities that are so much more navigable. This one is really,
so the other thing you can do is go to government and go to boards and committees. So government, and then boards and committees, and then you're gonna look for our name. All right, so now here is our home page. And then here's the agenda and minutes. So this is the second place that they can find it. And then you can click view all agendas and minutes, and then you click that, and then you see all the stuff. Do you see?
okay.
Um,
Yeah.
And then our minutes are right here. So for July 2nd, you see this?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you see this checkbox. So here are the minutes that I posted. There.
Okay.
So the good thing is that you have plenty to read to catch up.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So let me figure out how to get out of screen share. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to adjourn. Bill Newman,
Yes.
Felicia Lundquist, Garrick Perry,
Yes.
Jeremy Baker Paquette, Marissa Elkins, Marsha Morris, Usman Power Green, Renika Montgomery Tomaclo,
Yes.
Sarah Lynn Patterson, that's me, yes. Rachel Naismith.
Yes.
All right, thanks everybody. Can't wait to